Hey, Randy Hunter here, and I just wanted to give you a quick little bit of information about Set 4 in my Quick Tunes Jazz Improv Lesson Series. Now, you just heard me playing a little bit of the demonstration from one of the videos in the series, and let me just mention to you, the lessons are based on the tunes When Sunny Gets Blue, Willow Weep For Me, and a beautiful tune by Sam Rivers that many people aren't familiar with, Beatrice. That's one you got to check out if you don't know it. Now, the lessons cover improvisation. You know, we're not really working on learning the melodies, although I might give you some suggestions for how you might go about interpreting and phrasing some of these melodies. But just like with all of my Quick Tunes lessons, we're just working on building solos. You know, how do you solo on these chord progressions? How do you play solos that really complement the nature of the tune? So with Willow Weep For Me, I always like these bluesy kind of Houston person type solos on Willow Weep For Me. You know, Dexter does a great solo on this one too. But so this lesson on Willow Weep For Me really kind of takes a bluesy based approach that still involves learning to play the chord changes again with a bluesy style interpretation. On Beatrice, the harmony has a tendency to move in waves, so you'll want to check out this chord progression. It's kind of an unusual chord progression. So what I've worked at is developing an approach that complements the waves of the harmony at times with parallel lines. And then When Sunny Gets Blue is a beautiful ballad that you may have avoided at times. I know a lot of people avoid When Sunny Gets Blue because you look at those changes in the real book and it can look pretty tricky. So what I've worked at is creating a melodic approach to playing over these tricky changes. Now, stay tuned and you can view a few samples from these lessons. I'm not going to make this video too long. I want you to be able to get on with your practice, on with your day. So I just want to give you an idea of what's in these lessons, and hopefully you'll decide that they're right for you. And remember, I've got lots of other Quick Tunes lessons and mini jazz improvisation lessons at beginningsax.com. You can purchase my lessons there, and if you'd like to subscribe for access to all of my lessons, I have a subscription site, randyhunterjazz.vhx.tv, and I'd love to have you on board there. All right, so enjoy these samples. I might approach playing the chord changes. If I'm listening, if I'm having to play a tune by ear, those are the same things I listen for. Is the tune largely in a major key, a minor key? Does it move through a variety of tonal centers? Is it a blues-oriented tune? Whatever. So those are the questions I ask myself, whether I'm learning a tune by ear or if I have the luxury of reading it as I'm playing it. Now, with this tune, we can look through the changes and we know I'll tell you right up front, it's really kind of a blues-oriented tune. I've already kind of given you that hint anyway when I said that I like to do a blues-style interpretation of the tune. Now, what makes it this? You know, let's check our form. We've got A, B, A. We can quickly see that we've got two A sections, a bridge, and a final A section. Let's look through the A section. Now, on tenor sax, we're in the key of A, on concert pitch instruments in the key of G, alto in the key of E, and I'll put as many transpositions in the video here as I can, and everything, of course, will be transposed in your written download. So let's look at the tenor sax version, and we'll see that our first chord is A7. Let's think real quickly, what's the 4 chord and the 5 chord in A? Because we know that blues are generally based around the 1 dominant chord, the 4 dominant chord, and the 5 dominant chord. Now in A, our 1 chord, A dominant, A7. We start with that. 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C sharp, D is 4. D7's our 2nd chord, so right there we've got a big hint, A7, D7, A7, D7, A7. We're kind of going back and forth between the A7 and the D7 chord. That tells us right there that we have 2/3 of the blues components right there as far as harmony is concerned anyway. We can look a little farther down and we see the 5 chord, the E7 chord. Now we see some other chords in there. We'll talk about those as we go along. But anyway, those are our components right there. And we've got an 8-bar A section, so it's not like a 12-bar blues, but it's like an 8-bar blues inflected, blues influenced. Maybe we could even just flat out say blues type of chord progression right up there. It's not your basic 1-4 1-1 4-4 1-1 kind of blues, but 1-4 1-4 1. Then we go to the 4 for a couple of bars, and we're back to the 1, and in the turnaround we have the 5. So those are some of the things that really make the blues right there. Now let's look ahead to the bridge. Let's see what happens with the harmony. Play this for me. A, D, E, F, E, D. It goes right into the C in the melody. That's 3-1 on the A minor, C, A, and then how about C sharp A? So based on the melody, well, I really love that. We can take the melody and combine it with things that we know work on the scales or on the chords, and then all of a sudden we've got some improvisation vocabulary. I mean, who knows that's the melody? I guess we do, since we're talking about it. I mean, it certainly alludes to the melody if you're listening to it, but we're improvising at that point. We're just basing our improvisation off of the melody. And of course, depending on where your scales are, you can certainly dig into these chords and really jazz them a little bit more. You know, inflect them with all kinds of passing tones, arpeggios, approach. Is in G major, so let's get, we'll kind of agree on that, even though it does kind of shift around and floats through these keys, or through these, I'm hesitant to call them tonal centers, because I really think they're kind of wrapping around the key of G major, at least at first. And then you can see on the second line it goes to E minor. Now keep in mind that E minor is the relative minor to G major, so we're in E minor, and then up a half step, and then back down a half step to E minor, and then it drops down to C minor en route to a momentary B minor. So the thing about this is, we definitely have to learn the arpeggios and the scales that go with the chords, because we'll use the arpeggios and the scales in our improvisation, but the chord changes don't really hinge on the guide tone movement that we've worked at in a lot of tunes, so we'll have to take a little bit of a different approach. So my first suggestion in practice is to start out by learning these scales and arpeggios, and you can see I've got the scales written out. I've got, for the first chord, the G major, I've got the G Lydian scale. Now typically you might think that a G major scale would go with a G major chord, but I like the Lydian scale because that eliminates the avoid tone. The fourth tone in the major scale is often considered the avoid tone. We eliminate the avoid aspect of this tone by raising it a half step with the Lydian scale. So this way, all of our scale tones on these chords that I'll show you, all of our scale tones can be considered target tones or tones for emphasis. The only minor exception would be perhaps on the minor 2-5-1, the F sharp half diminished to B. We're going to move chord to chord with direction rather than starting at any particular point on each chord. Listen as I play this with the track for maybe 2 choruses around. Okay? I can't stress to you the value of learning the words to some of these tunes, particularly when you're talking about a ballad or a slower tune like When Sunny Gets Blue. Just knowing the words helps you interpret and play the tune in a manner that's really kind of authentic to the tune. And This one really tells the story. You know, when Sunny gets blue, her eyes get gray and cloudy, then the rain begins to fall. And I'm not going to recite the whole tune for you because I want you to listen to some versions of it, listen to some vocal versions in particular, but also, if you need to, read the words and spend a little time getting to know the words, because that'll help you in the way that you phrase both the melody, but also it'll help you develop a solo where the phrasing is complementary to the nature of the tuners. And let's look at the form. We can see that this is a common A B A type form. It's got an 8-bar A section that's played twice, a B section, also known as the bridge, that we'll go through, and then the final 8-bar A section that has a little variation on the end, but still it's a B A form. So that's now, one thing I like to think of is having the scales and knowing the common tones scale to scale, chord to chord. That way you can have your chord tones, the arpeggio tones, as target tones, and your scale tones as connecting tones. Now, if you know the common tones chord to chord, that makes it easy to pivot from one chord to the next. So one thing that I've noticed in transcribing and checking out transcriptions of great players is sometimes it's not really clear when the chord change is being made. You know, it's rare that a great player will make the chord change exactly on the chord that on the arrival of each chord. Often chord changes are anticipated. Sometimes they're even delayed a little bit. You know, at least the solo lines will anticipate or occasionally delay their resolution. So one of the ways that that you do this is, again, by knowing the common tones chord to chord, scale to scale, and then you've got the chord tones that make great targets. And I like to think of targets two different ways. Sometimes you have pass-through targets where maybe you'll aim for a certain area of a chord at the change. Maybe you hit a tone that identifies the chord as your line travels through it. So you go from tones that are on one chord and into tones that are on the next. You know, for example, like on A minor to D7, well, those tones, those scales, those chords are created from the G major scale. Now, the next two chords, C minor 7 to F7, actually come from the B flat major or G minor scale. And we've got B flats and E flats. So maybe I'm coming down the, let's say hypothetically, I'm coming down to the A minor D7 change, and I'm targeting the C minor 7 to F7 change. So there I played right down A, G, F sharp. Now I'm clearly on that A minor to D7 change, A, G, F sharp. E flat, I hit the E flat. Well, that's the flat 9 on that D7 chord. It's also the minor third on the approaching C minor chord. I'm still in the chord progression. I'm still at that point. I'm on the D7 chord, but I've got the E flat, D, C. Those notes are clearly on that D7 chord, you know, especially if I'm thinking that is a flat 9, but they're also clearly from the C minor 7 chord. And then I'm targeting the B flat on the C minor. So I targeted it at